Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another one of these webinars. First up, for anyone that hasn't joined before or doesn't know me, this is a little bit about me. I'm a Norfolk-based naturopathic nutritionist. A lot of people don't really know what that means, so don't worry if you don't. You know, a lot of what we encompass as nutritionists who have been trained naturopathically is really looking at treating people, you know, the whole of the person, and really trying to get to the root cause of their issues. And these are some of the sort of symptoms and issues that I often deal with the people that see me. Last month we had essential nutrients for your immune system. There's a link there on the screen, but you can also go to the blog section of my website, which is np-nutrition.com. If you want to watch the recording. So that was last month, and then these are the ones before. So we had naturopathic techniques, and then we also had an introduction to naturopathic nutrition. So, you know, if you really want to know a bit more about what that encompasses, then I suggest that you have a look at that. So just as a recap, you know, looking at naturopathic principles and what that actually means. I've already said a little bit, you know, about treating the whole person and trying to get to that root cause. You know, and these are the other things we're really looking at using nature and all it has to offer. You know, the doctor as teacher, that really is about what I'm doing here, you know, teaching people how to help themselves, basically. You know, that is the ultimate goal, is that everyone has those skills to be able to help themselves. You know, I often say this to people: we live in an amazing time. We have so much information at our fingertips, but it is overwhelming and also massively contradictory. So it can be a real minefield. So, you know, I really hope that people get a lot out of these webinars. That's the aim. So, you know, naturopathic beliefs centered around the belief that the body needs to be able to rid itself of toxins or effectively throw them off. And to do this in the most efficient and safe way, the body's elimination pathways must be clear and working optimally. And that is, the main ones are our skin, our lungs, our liver, our kidneys, our bowels, and the womb in women. So if any of these are blocks, that's stopping toxins coming out, you know, that's when we're going to get sort of the skin issues. You know, we might get constipation, we might get chronic bronchitis in our lungs. You know, so it's really, really important to support these things. And I think I've been thinking about this with spring being in the air, that maybe a webinar on specifically on detoxification and cleansing the body would be quite appropriate. So I think I'll add that in at some point. So naturopathic nutrition, you know, we consider many aspects to aid in the healing process. It really isn't just about food. We're really looking at the whole body, you know, how you're sleeping, what your gut health like, how you're digesting your food, you know, what your stress levels are like. There's so many aspects to wellness, you know, and getting the body into a place where it can heal effectively. You know, utilizing natural healing principles and really aiming to get to that root cause. You know, quite often what we say is that the symptom that people are experiencing, you know, constipation is a classic. If you went to your GP would give you a laxative, and obviously that is in inverted commas fixing the issue, but it's not actually getting to the root cause of why that constipation is happening in the first place. And that is what we really want to do, because at the end of the day, you know, these things are just sort of brushing over. They're not actually properly fixing. You know, some of the things that we like to incorporate are natural foods. You know, that's wild fish, filtered water, grass-fed meat, organic where you can, and seasonal and local, and also quality supplements, because they can be extremely, extremely helpful. Some of the other naturopathic techniques we use are here. And tonight we are going to be talking about balancing blood sugar. And the reason I really wanted to do this was that it is one of the main things that I see people having issues with, whether they know it or not. And also one of the things that I always talk to people about, you know, and ways to balance their blood sugar, because at the end of the day, it is really essential to your health. You know, we don't want to be having those up down spikes of your blood sugar goes up, it crashes, it goes up, it crashes, you know, which a lot of people experience throughout the day, regardless of whether they have actual blood sugar issues in terms of diabetes and stuff. You know, this is something that is happening to everyone. And I'm sure once I go through some of the symptoms, you'll definitely be able to relate to it. So just a little disclaimer, because this is a bit more of a you know, a medical type of thing, you know, in terms of diabetes. So the information provided in this webinar is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not intended to be a substitute for a professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. And never, please never stop taking any prescribed medication before first talking to your GP. You know, a lot of people don't want to be on all the medication they are, but sometimes you do have to be. And even I, in, you know, my profession, accept that. So, you know, you really shouldn't just be stopping taking stuff. So balancing your blood sugar isn't just about dodging those afternoon slumps or preventing a hangry meltdown. It's crucial for your overall health and well-being. When blood sugar levels go awry, the effects can ripple through your body and mind, impacting everything from energy levels to long-term health conditions. So let's dive into why maintaining balanced blood sugar is essential and how you can achieve it. So unstable blood sugar levels can lead to a range of uncomfortable symptoms. These include extreme hunger. You know, you suddenly just really feel, this is one of the things as well that I say to a lot of people, you know, if you're balancing your blood sugar, and we'll talk about how you're going to do that effectively in a bit, but if you are balancing your blood sugar, you really do suddenly, you just have that even keel, and you don't suddenly have that extreme hunger where then you're just going to probably make some bad food choices and eat everything inside. You know, we've all been there, even I've been there. So, you know, we all know what that feels like. Feeling hangry, you know, that's a classic, suddenly getting very irritable and frustrated. You know, having a real dip in your energy levels and feeling really weak. Anxiety, you know, this is a massive one. You know, people, obviously there are a plethora of reasons why people experience anxiety, but if we can rule out these things in terms of food and what we're eating and how we're eating, you know, to try and mitigate these things, and then we can see where the anxiety is. And, you know, quite often people say, you know, I haven't had an anxiety attack, or, you know, for ages. And, you know, it's just something to try. That's what I always say. And like I said before, poor food choices, you know, you're suddenly absolutely so hungry that you just eat everything inside. You know, even reduced to sweating and chills and shakiness. And then that's a really big one. You know, you can really feel absolutely awful. Heart palpitations as well. That can be a really scary thing. And, you know, over time, we're looking at weight gain, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit later. And it's really putting a stress on your liver, you know, this, and it increases your risk for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And we really want to mitigate things like that. So, you know, these are all really good reasons why you should do it. And it's not hard, you know, it's not a hard thing. And, you know, we'll talk about all of that in a bit. So signs of blood sugar imbalance to watch for. Stay alert for these signs that your blood sugar may be out of whack. So, carbohydrate and sugar cravings, an intense desire for these sugary or starchy foods. Panic attacks, like we said earlier, you know, with anxiety, suddenly being overwhelmed with these feelings. Afternoon slump. Now, this is an absolute classic, you know. How many of us get to that sort of 3-4 o'clock, want a coffee, or, you know, chocolate biscuit, or just a chocolate bar? You know, that's a really classic sort of symptom of this. And again, with the long-term issues, you know, gaining weight around your middle, getting that sort of spare tire, as it's called, and this can be really hard to lose, you know, this sort of fat. So, you know, again, this is another reason to try and get everything into balance. headaches as well. This is, and even migraines. I see a lot of people have these sort of things, and balancing your blood sugar can do a lot. It can really help. Again, a lot of women with severe PMS symptoms, this can really, really be helped by balancing your blood sugar. Poor cognition, getting that brain fog that a lot of us, deal with a lot of the time, so that can be really, really helpful in mitigating that. And waking up in the night, if your blood sugar is spiking, this can really interrupt your sleep. And, long term, what we're looking at is something called insulin resistance, and this then may go on to develop type 2 diabetes, which is, it is reversible. And like I said, if you're on any medication, please don't just stop that, really talk to your doctor. But that, there are very good doctors out there that recognize this, and even one or two who really go for that food approach in their clinics rather than going for straight to the drugs. And again, just saying, from a naturopathic perspective, managing blood sugar is the key to reducing stress on your body and maintaining overall health. And it's one of the things that was really rammed down our throats when we were learning, but it really is key, because when we talk about stress and stress on the body, all of these things can have a huge impact. I think it's amazing. A lot of people find it really amazing how much differently they feel when they start implementing these changes. So to keep your blood sugar levels in check, remember these rules. And it's not hard, it really isn't. You want to be incorporating protein and healthy fats, and we'll go on to look about these specifically in a minute, in every meal and snack, I would say. Every meal and snack. So you're combining the protein, healthy fat, and if you're having carbohydrates, they need to be complex, which again we'll talk about, and these help to stabilize your blood sugar. Another really good hack is starting with protein. So just eating a couple of bites of protein at your meal before anything else, again, can really help to minimize blood sugar spikes. And another thing that I will add on to that is going for a walk after meals. That can be really, really helpful in lowering your blood sugar, not letting it spike. Basically, it can be really helpful. So just looking at some good sources of protein to incorporate: grass-fed meat, wild fish, tofu, miso and tempeh, organic beans and pulses, although just be aware that they are high in carbohydrates as well. Then you've got plant foods like brown rice and quinoa, which contain some protein. They're not a whole protein source, but they do contain some. Nuts and nut butters. Raw organic dairy is the idealist. If you're eating dairy, that's the most ideal. Organic free-range eggs, and then seeds like chia, hemp, flax, sunflower, sesame, tahini and pumpkin. And then looking at fats, you want organic grass-fed animal fat in moderation if you are going to eat that sort of fat, and it needs to be grass-fed because you do not want to be eating all of the hormones and stuff that goes into the fat, if it's not organic. Extra virgin olive oil, and you can cook with this as well. I know that might seem an extravagance, but due to its high antioxidant levels in extra virgin olive oil, it really is okay to cook with that in high temperatures. Coconut oil, again, in moderation. It's not really an oil that's been around in our culture for very many years. So, there is debate out there as to whether or not it is a healthy fat for us. But I would say, in moderation. Avocados and avocado oil. Healthy seed oils like flax, hemp and pumpkin, they're great in salads. And then you've got your fatty fish, which are a really good source of fats. Cold pressed nut oils, and then also quality omega-3 supplements. I would say that a lot of us are very deficient in omega-3, and well, there are a lot better sources of omega-3 supplements nowadays. You know, it used to be a bit of a joke that, oh, you know, I can't take that because of the fishy burps. Well, you shouldn't be getting that if it's a good quality one, because that is a sign that the oil is rancid, which is not very pleasant. But nowadays, you know, like I say every time, if you want any suggestions or recommendations, please do email me. That's absolutely fine. But there are a lot of good options out there now. And then also organic grass-fed butter and ghee are excellent sources. And the best or most obvious grass-fed butter in the supermarkets is Kerrygold. That's in most supermarkets. Yes, so like I just said with the omega-3, you know, or when you're supplementing with anything, it really is important to buy good quality. So now looking at fats that we want to be avoiding in our diet. Non-organic meat and dairy fats, you know, we really do want to be careful with these. Rapeseed oil, if anyone knows me well, you'll know that I have talked about this quite a lot. It's a very inflammatory oil. It is unfortunately in a lot of stuff nowadays. It's really hard to avoid. And also it is being pushed as a healthy oil because it's non-saturated. And, you know, it really isn't a healthy oil. It used to be used as an industrial lubricant, and now it is in our food chain. And it's process that it's gone through of deodorizing and bleaching, and it's a very processed oil, you know, and we really do not want to be consuming it, trust me. So, and like I said, it's in a lot of stuff, you know, but it's like it's getting into that habit. And you know, I am that guy who looks at all the ingredients in the supermarket, unfortunately, to my husband's disbelief. There we go. You know, it is about looking at the ingredients, and, you know, things that you would think were healthy, like things like hummus is a classic example, more often than not has got rapeseed oil, and, you know, most mayonnaises, a lot of you know, non-dairy spreads and stuff like that. It's in everything. It's really hard to avoid. So just, you know, I wouldn't say that, you know, you need to avoid these things completely. I totally understand that that's actually quite hard. So it's just being aware and cutting down. So in swapping out other things, you know, just being aware. Sunflower oil as well. These, you know, it's another very highly processed oil. And then hydrogenated fats and margarines, you know, been aware of the toxicness of these for quite a while, you know. And then there's other refined oils. I mean, vegetable oil is generally rapeseed oil. So, you know, these things that are stored in plastic as well, they will be absorbing that plastic. You know, they're very cheap. They aren't quality, you know, and if you're eating these every day, you know, that does take its toll. So looking at complex carbohydrates, you want to be going for whole grains and really limiting your gluten containing ones, really, you know, like wheat and barley, you know. So adding in other things, quinoa, beans, pulses and legumes, skin on fruits and vegetables, gluten-free oats, short grain brown rice, really excellent, and buckwheat pasta, you know, that is gluten-free, and I think it's a very good substitute for normal wheat pasta. Is the best one I've found. And then really looking at limiting the simple carbohydrates, and basically that is sugar and white foods. You know, we all know these things. It's the cakes, the biscuits, the white bread, the white rice, the white pasta, the white potatoes, breakfast cereals. You know, it's not hard to know that these things, not only understanding that they're going to be having an effect on our blood sugar, but that they are just generally not very healthy foods, you know. And I'm not going to say don't ever eat these things, you know, I'm not a saint, you know, but it's just being aware of the effect. And, you know, if you're someone who does suffer, for example, from anxiety, and, you know, suddenly feels anxious and then goes, oh, actually, what did I have for breakfast? And you realize that you've had no protein all day. Well, maybe that's a contributing factor, you know, and then something at work tipped you over the edge. You know, we have to just be aware and take these things into our own hands. and how we can help ourselves. So something to really understand about the whole blood sugar thing, and I won't go on too much about this, but it is understanding that there's something called the glycemic index and the glycemic load. Now, the GI or glycemic index measures how quickly foods raise your blood sugar levels, and foods with a high GI will cause a rapid spike, while those with a low GI will offer a slower, steadier release of glucose. And the glycemic load, this considers both the quality, the GI, and quantity of carbohydrates in the food, providing a fuller picture of its impact on blood sugar levels. So some examples, and just so you know, just for context, pure sugar, pure white sugar would have a GI of 100. And a white baguette, 30 grams of a white baguette, because it's looking at the amount, is 95. So with 5 off pure sugar there, you know, it's going to be spiking your blood sugar extremely high and extremely quickly. You know, the difference between a white baguette and a whole grain bread, you know, is really significant, really. You know, and then looking at things like peanuts, and even a banana is fairly high. You know, we really have to be careful about these things. So you want to be looking for, you know, and there's a lot of these online, and some of them are a bit conflicting, but it gives you a general picture, you know, of looking for foods with a low GI and a low GL to keep your blood sugar levels stable and support long-term health. So what else can we do? You know, really looking at incorporating some regular physical activity. Yeah, it plays a crucial role in blood sugar regulation. Physical activity helps increase insulin sensitivity, and we'll talk a bit more about what that means, and promotes the efficient use of glucose in the body. So aim for a mix of cardiovascular exercises like walking, running or cycling, and strength training. So that's weightlifting and body weight exercises, you know, and you don't have to have a gym for this. You just have a couple of weights, and failing that, some tins of beans would be better than nothing. And like I said, a brisk walk after meals can really help manage your blood sugar levels. Staying hydrated, you know, something I really talk about a lot. Proper hydration is essential for maintaining balanced blood sugar levels. The water helps your kidneys flush out excess sugar from the bloodstream, and you really want to be aiming to drink plenty of water throughout the day, you know, a steady stream throughout the day, ideally 2 to 3 litres, and consider herbal teas or water-rich foods as well, to stay hydrated. Again, something else I really talk about is getting quality sleep. You know, this can really affect our blood sugar levels and our insulin sensitivity. You know, the next day, if you've had a bad night's sleep, you just want to eat and eat and eat. You know, everything is out of whack. It really can affect things. So you want to be getting a good 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night. And you want to create that really consistent sleep schedule. If you do have sleep issues, you know, establish a relaxing bedtime routine and make your sleep environment as comfortable as possible. Again, something else I really talk about a lot, and that is managing stress. You know, this can really lead to elevated blood sugar levels due to the release of stress hormones like cortisol. You really want to incorporate stress-reducing activities into your daily routine, such as meditation, deep breathing, exercise, yoga, or spending time in nature. You know, a lot of these things are free, and you've really got to, and I'm bad for it as well, but you've really got to take the time out of your day for these things, because it really will have a huge impact on your health. It really will. I can't tell you enough. Finding ways to relax and unwind can help keep your blood sugar levels in check. So then really looking at high fiber foods, you know, this helps to slow the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. You know, this is why, you know, if you were eating a potato, you would want to eat it with the skin on, because that extra fiber is slowing that release of sugar into the bloodstream, and that can really aid in stabilizing your blood sugar levels. You want to include a variety of high fiber foods in your diet, such as vegetables, fruits with the skins, like I said, legumes and whole grains. Fiber also supports digestive health, and can also help with weight management. Another aspect is considering the timing of your meals. Eating at regular intervals and avoiding long periods without food can help maintain stable blood sugar levels. Now, what I would say about this, in the age where there is a lot of people intermittent fasting, you know, a lot of people might say, well, I don't need to eat regularly. And what I would say to that is, if you are already eating a fairly healthy diet, and you're not getting the symptoms of these blood sugar, you know, imbalance, basically, then that's absolutely fine. But if you're someone who is, you know, eating a lot of sugar, a lot of simple carbohydrates, you know, you want to be training your body back in slowly. And a great way of doing that is having food at regular intervals, not going for long periods, not trying to intermittent fast. You can get there, but before, you just really need to maintain that balance. You want to aim to eat balanced meals and snacks throughout the day and avoid skipping meals. You know, as well, that is, I think it depends. If you're eating a lower carbohydrate diet completely, you know, often I find that people can really, you know, they can go for quite long periods without eating once their blood sugar is more stable and they've been doing that for a while, you know. So it's really thinking about maybe taking out those carbohydrates if that's something you think works for you. So like I said, it is beneficial fasting, but only once you have balanced your blood sugar, and then you're no longer getting symptoms. So, you know, in any diet, we really want to be getting these antioxidant rich foods into us. You know, they can help reduce that inflammation and oxidative stress in the body. And this can be really beneficial for blood sugar control. So incorporating antioxidant rich foods like berries, they're the classic, leafy greens, nuts and seeds into your diet to support your overall health. Right, so now looking at insulin and weight management. So insulin is your body's fat storing hormone. So when we become insulin resistant, we are more likely to gain weight. So, you know, talking in technical terms, high blood sugar levels prompt your pancreas to produce more insulin, and this leads to fat storage because you're not utilizing all of it. By eating slow release unrefined carbohydrates and balancing your meals with protein and healthy fats, you can help keep insulin levels in check, support your heart health, and reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. Balancing your blood sugar is a powerful way to enhance your overall health and well-being. So why not take charge of your diet and make these smart, healthy choices today? You know, you really, another step to this is looking, like I said, I sort of talked about before, you know, going for lower carbohydrate meals. You know, if anyone wants more information on that, then do let me know. And I personally think, you know, if you have had these blood sugar imbalances and dips and spikes for years, and you do have that classic fat around the middle that you just can't shift, which is often the case, it can be very hard to get rid of that, and you often lose weight elsewhere before you do lose that weight. Thinking about a lower carb diet or a ketogenic diet might be the way forward. So if anyone has any questions about this, please do message me. That's absolutely fine. Do email me. You know, it's not hard to really implement these things. You know, if you just make that ingrain that thing in you to remember, whenever you're having a meal or snack, have I got protein? Is there some healthy fat? So, you know, what's that look like? So say you're having an apple. Yes, that's more fiber rich, especially, you know, if you've got the skin on. But, you know, that fruit sugar can still spike your blood sugar. So, you know, you want to be pairing that with some nuts. So then you're getting some healthy fat and some protein in the nut with the apple, you know, and that can be really, really helpful. And like I said before, eating a bit of the protein food first can really help. You know, so it's just thinking about every time you eat something, you know, that Kit Kat with your coffee, for example, you know, am I making the right healthy choice? Can I eat some protein first? Is this going to make me feel shaky and hangry later on? You know, I'm going to have that sort of boost of energy, and then I'm going to have that absolute slump as everything all comes crashing down because I haven't balanced my blood sugar. And I think once you know that, it's quite hard to miss it, really, because it's quite obvious. So, you know, it's just being aware of these things and trying to implement them into your day-to-day life. So next webinar, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to do a case study. You know, one of my clients that had a comprehensive gut test. Obviously it'll be anonymous, but I think this might be quite a good insight into, you know, how I work with someone, what I do, and what a comprehensive gut test shows, because I do talk about these a lot, but, you know, people don't really have an idea of what that actually means, because, you know, often your doctor can also do gut tests to a certain degree. But what we can do, and the gut tests we have access to are a lot more comprehensive. We're going to be testing a lot more things and giving a much bigger picture. And it's quite frustrating because, you know, I do have a lot of people who come to me who've, you know, inverted commas, had all the tests, and they think they've had all the things that they can that their doctors offered them. And they get to the stage where their doctor says, well, that's pretty much it. You just got to live with your symptoms. And, you know, it's extremely frustrating because I and everyone in my profession knows there's a lot more that can be done, and that people do not have to be suffering like this forever. You know, it really is that is really the case. Yeah, so this, I'm hoping, will be a good insight into, you know, the gut test that I can offer. You know, and I will say this when I go through it, they are expensive. You know, I'm not going to beat around the bush. They're an expensive test, but it is very comprehensive, and it will give you a very good idea of what's going on, rather than just, you know, there's a lot that I can do just from symptoms. Obviously, a lot of people can do a lot of things just from symptoms, but this just gives you a really good idea. So the monthly sauna at the space is going well by all accounts, and they've got another one in April, so that's going to be every Friday at the end of the month. So if you fancy that, I would go along. And then we have our free events at the space. The next Monday one is on the 14th of April. At that one, we've got mindfulness group session, a Pilates group session, and then massage and listening sessions, which are individual. So you really do need to book those if you want to come along. And it's all free. Everything's free. And I do the food. It's lovely food. And then we have our next Saturday session, which is actually this Saturday, sorry, 3:30 till 7:30. We've got our mindfulness cafe before, which you don't need to book into. I'll be doing an evening meal, which you do need to book. Just message me for that. And the yoga, message me. And then some healing and nutrition taster sessions, which is with Louise. And you need to book those in. But go to the space website and have a look if you fancy it. Everything is free. You know, it's a free event. Get involved. So I've got my first lunch and learn this Saturday before the hub on seaweeds. If anyone wants to get in quick with that, let me know. The next one it will be on Sunday the 8th of June, and that is on fermented foods. So that will be a lovely lunch and some fermented food demo to learn about the lovely benefits of fermented food. So yeah, that's me again, and thank you very much, everyone. If you've got any questions, there is my email address, or go to my website. I really hope you found this helpful and informative. If you have any questions at any point, please do let me know. And thank you, everyone. for joining, and I hope you found this informative, and I hope you come to the next one, and I will send out the recording and a link to the next one. All right, thanks everyone.